Hello everybody. I'm going to do a fairly quick video here on a modification I have done to correct this Lc9's trigger, and I'll explain what the problem was, and if some of you are actually watching this you may already know. Now the problem with the trigger is obviously it's unloaded. I'm going to insert my clip here. I am going to dry fire this. If you go to squeeze the trigger, right when the hammer comes back to about this area, it got really hard and gritty, and if you released a little bit and then came back into the pull, it would smoothen out. And it took me a while to figure out where that actual problem was, but for those of you who have the same issue, I'm going to show you how to fix this, and it will make a whole new gun out of this, and it's very easy to do. Now you won't be able to feel this, but right now I already have mine done, and it is just smooth as glass. Of course it's got a heavy long pull on it, but that's not what this video is all about. And there's another one. So I'm going to get into taking this thing down, and I'm going to show you how to actually remedy that problem and where the issue is. So I'm going to start my stripping process. If you don't know this part, you need to look elsewhere or in your manual, and this is strictly going to be correcting the problem I outlined. So I'm going to go ahead and strip it down, get my mag out of there. Alright, and believe it or not, this is where the problem is, and it has to do with the firing pin and the firing pin release block. So I'm just going to set this up here, and hopefully everything turns out. But I'll tell you how to test yours if this is where the problem is. Take a small screwdriver, an implement, whatever. Press on the firing pin until it stops, and then let it go fairly quickly. And if you press down this firing pin safety release here, it should be smooth up and down. If you start pushing that down slowly and you hear or feel a little click, then you have this problem, and you can repeat it over and over and have that same issue. Push it in, let it go, click, push it in, let it go, click. It will do it over and over again. It shouldn't do that. At any given point in time, when you press and release this release here, hopefully this is showing up, it should be a smooth travel in and out. There should be no catches. But there was an issue with that. So I'm going to go ahead and get into breaking this thing down. I already have mine mostly broken down as far as what I needed to do. So you need to get either a pin punch or a roll pin punch would actually be more appropriate for this. And I'm going to drive this roll pin, it's actually partially out, but I'm going to drive it out from this side, and you don't have to drive it all the way out. I'm only driving it out to the point where this loaded indicator is out. So I'm just going to strike it a few times, and I'm just feeling that spring tension right here with my finger, and once I feel that pop out, then I know I've gone far enough. And there is the indicator. Now there's a small spring down in here that you have to be very careful with, and it's actually conical in shape, so you have to kind of get in with something and pry it out of there. Try a different tool here. Hold your thumb on it, whatever, wiggle it, and there it is. And if you take note of that screen, like I said, it's conical in shape and the fat side goes down. It's a little bit of a bear to get back in there, but that's what it is. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is just turn it over. Take the same punch that you had originally used, put it down through this small hole right here in the bottom of the slide, and you can push out the firing pin retaining bolt that I almost lost right there. Don't lose it. And from this point, all we have to do to get that firing pin out of there is take a small screwdriver. Actually, you can actually use your finger. I'm going to back it up because when we push this down right here, this is going to want to shoot out, spring and all. So I'm just going to back it up and kind of hold it, press it down. There it is. There's the firing pin, and there's the spring. And that's as far as we need to take this weapon down to make this correction. Now I'm going to set up here and I'm going to make a crude kind of exploded view of this firing pin so you can see exactly what I'm talking about, because it is quite small, on what I did to correct the problem. So let me set up for that. I'll be back with you and then we'll make this thing work great. Okay, well here's the crude representation of the actual firing pin, and the area we're going to be focusing on is right here in this L. This is the area where that safety release, that firing pin release safety, is actually contacting right here in this L. So it's in here about like this. So what basically needs to happen is this area needs to be filed forward. So here's the L of that channel. You need to take this forward just a small amount. And to do that, I took a small needle file, a flat needle file, and one side of it, doesn't have teeth, so it won't mar one surface. And I just stuck it in here and just by hand just lightly filed this edge forward just a little bit. I maybe did 8 or 10 strokes. Then I put everything back together, tested it. It was still a little bit sticky, so I took it back out, did a few more strokes on it, and just kind of went back and forth until I got it correct. You don't really have to be too concerned about messing this up or going a little bit too far. I don't think it matters all that much, but just take off as little as possible. And in the very worst scenario, you can always buy a new firing pin and it'll probably put you right back to where you started. But to give an idea on why this is not supposed to be contacting here, we have a spring in here on the firing pin which is exerting a rearward motion. And as it stands with that gritty, sticky trigger, it's actually contacting this point right here, and it shouldn't be. The little retaining pin, which is in this area, it runs down through the slot, and if you look at the firing pin from the right angle, you'll see the slot cut out in it. Right there is where that should be contacting, on the edge of this slot right here. That's what retains the firing pin and still gives this the space it needs to travel up and down without interference. So once I did that, the problem was remedied. That's all you need to do to fix that. So I'm going to go ahead and show how to put this back together. It's fairly self-explanatory, but we'll go through it anyway. So I'm just using a couple blocks of wood as support. Lay your slide back down. Go ahead and grab your firing pin and your firing pin spring. And when we put the firing pin back in the firing pin hole, that notch that you just took a little bit of the steel off of, you want that notch to be facing downwards. So I'm just going to start pushing it in there. And you have to press down on that release to get it to feed in. And make sure your slot's vertical. Take an object, press down here, push it in all the way, release, kind of wiggle, and now it's being retained in there. Turn it over, grab your retaining pin, drop it down in the slot where it came from, and I'm going to use the punch I used to take it apart, seat it down in the hole. Now the little spring goes in next, just above that pin we put in, and it's conical in shape, so the fat side is actually going to go down, and you kind of have to get it lined over the hole and push down and wiggle it. Maybe take the tip of a screwdriver or something round. There we go, and it will sit down into that hole. Make sure you get that in there all the way. And by the way, I didn't drive this pin out all the way. I just took it out just enough to get this loaded chamber indicator out. You don't need to drive it all the way out. And by putting it together and testing it, you only need to drive it in there just enough to hold that, put the gun together, then you just tap it out a little bit and you can take everything apart and redo it. So anyway, just put this back in here. I'm going to turn it on its side, kind of hold it in with my thumb, start it down with the hammer, and now it's in there. Everything's looking good, and I'm going to seat it the rest of the way with my punch. And I'm taking that pin just below the surface. One more, right there. That's right where it should be. And this would be a good time to double check. Go ahead and press your pin, release it, and then press on that firing pin safety release, and it should go up and down without any of the clicks. If you still have a little bit of drag in here, go ahead and take it back apart, file a little bit more out, and you'll get that thing perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of the weapon together. Gotta get it just right, sorry about that. The slide wants to drop down in there. There we go. Alright, empty magazine. I'm going to go ahead and load it up, do a dry fire here, and see what we got. Smooth as glass. No catch, no gritty, and it's repeatable every time, and the trigger feels identical every time I squeeze it. So with that being said, if you guys are having the problem with the sticky / gritty trigger on the Lc9 right before it breaks, then this is the solution to your problem. So take your time, you can do it. And I hope this helps you guys out. Thanks for watching, and good luck.